Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
He's Garret Price.
How's it going?
It's going super swell, super sweet because we're back after week 3, getting ready to get into week 4. By then, we'll be about 33% of the fantasy season. Nobody got a major injury, which was fantastic. And, this is where things start to really kind of like going forward, really start to cement themselves in the 2024 season narrative. Like, what's for real? What's a fluke? Once we get through this 4th game, like that's it. Like we're a third of the way through here. We know how some of these offenses are going to run. Like obviously injuries, people coming back, people getting hurt will change things. But, we'll see players and defenses start to really acclimate themselves for the season.
Bye weeks happen week 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're really going to cement yourself in your dynasty leagues as well, because remember, like these teams that are like hanging by, right? Like they have a star lineup in there. All of a sudden they lose a couple games here and there because now their bye weeks are kicking in. They don't have that one player to fit that position. It's where like you almost wish you just had all your bye weeks on 1 week. So you just take one big L. Compared to like, you just go through those every single week and you're losing a guy and your third like wide receiver is like Cedric Tillman. Like it's like, I'm not going to do good today.
That was good.
It's just I talked to you guys before the show. Like next week's show, I want to do a show on like looking at just our overall dynasty ranks and kind of how things changed a quarter of the way through the season. I know after last night's game, I moved Jayden Daniels up to my number 4 overall player in Superflex, and I kind of want to talk about it a little bit more in depth, but we'll just do it next week. We have time, so we have more time to do it. And I'm honestly tempted to even put him up even higher for what he brings to the table, fantasy football production. And no, that's not an overreaction of me watching him play on Monday night where he looked almost literally perfect. It's just like everything that I saw on tape, and I remember on tape, I said, I really have it 1A, 1B when it came to Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels. That's how I viewed it. And then, like I said in regular, like 1 QB leagues, like Jayden Daniels to be the first QB off the board pretty easily. Everything that I loved on his tape really came together last night. It's come together so far all season, 3 games in, and I love his composure. I love his abilities out there. He's just fantasy football gold. So we're going to kind of like look at him. Receivers, I know we talked last week, Garrett, like we had multiple receivers jumping in our top 12. Some people jump in Jamar Chase. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the running position, quarterback, tight end right now. We'll go ahead and look at the tight end rankings. It's like literally like a game of Yahtzee where like you just went in and put all the tight ends names in a little bin there and shook it up and tossed it out. I'm like, here you go. Here's your top 12. Let's see if we can sprinkle one of the good guys in there. So
Scott Fishbowl, it was one of those situations where I didn't realize how long I had waited to take a tight end. And so I got stuck at the end with Mike Gesicki, Colby Parkinson, and Chigo Okonkwo. I'm actually really happy with that because I didn't have to spend a premium pick on a tight end, and Parkinson and Gesicki are doing enough, and they're doing just as much as everybody else right now.
It's such an ugly situation at the tight end position, man. It is it is for how we were excited that this is starting to become a more deep position, and there's more guys that are here that are going to be high level performers. It just the floor completely dropped out from underneath us there in the first 3 weeks of this weird season. This has been one of the weirdest seasons I remember in a long time, and the tight end position in particular seems to be the most bonkers out of all of them.
Dude, I literally said when we did the episode, I was like, I know I say it all the time, and it gets repeated a lot in the community, but like this would be the year that the tight end, I think, really solidifies itself as a deep class and kind of really takes a step forward. It's taking the biggest step back, man. Like I know there's been a country song or two about that, but like here, write me another one because this is ridiculous. But we got a good show for you today. We're going to talk about, we have the legit list coming up here. Garrett put a list together of 10 players that, are they legit? We'll kind of rank them in order where we see them. Of course, we have the trade of the week we're going to talk about this week as well, and the numbers that matter segment. And we did also want to make a change. I want to let everybody know for the Nerd Herd episodes that we always pick out. We kind of changed that narrative, how we're going to do it. We're actually letting the Nerd Herd going forward for in season. We'll see how it works out of off season. Outside of times we feel like we have to do certain shows, pick the topic that they want us to talk about for about 45 minutes to an hour. So I know this week, Garret, you said they want us to review some trades. So they're going to throw a whole bunch of trades out there for us. But a really good, another perk that we thought of outside of the Dynasty GM, which is the best tool in Dynasty. And to let everybody know, we just added ESPN fantasy leagues to that. So you get literally all this input. I say literally again, doing it too much.
Literally.
I literally say literally way too much. And, we added the ESPN fantasy leagues, which means you can run your redraft leagues off the Dynasty GM. All you got to do is put in contender mode, import your ESPN leagues, and abracadabra, you got yourself a redraft tool with a lineup optimizer. So we got that. That's exciting to get it in there. We got Yahoo coming soon as well. So go ahead and put your hands over your chest to hide how hard those erect nipples are for how excited you are. So that's really exciting. And of course, the Nerd Herd, like we said, how everybody's gonna be able to go ahead and pick the show topic that we're gonna do for a little while. Some might say, hey, that's lazy. Come up with your own topics, but I disagree. We're just giving the people what they want, baby.
And Rich, we just had a huge film update to the first big one of the year. Huge film update to the film room, like over 80 games, big names like Ashton Genty and some really excited players. So all kinds of stuff going on at Dynasty Nerds.
And Garret, what kind of film is that in the Dynasty Nerds film room?
All 22. This isn't the broadcast.
Keep your hands where they're at. Keep your hands where they're at. Keep them there. I know, just thought you could get any more excited. They're like, oh, look at this pervert over here. This guy's a walking, talking blood flow.
I don't even know the visual on that is hard to describe.
Homo erectus, Garret. Homo erectus. Look it up in your book that has words in erectus.
It's got to be a biology book, I think, or a history book.
Gotta be.
Which book?
I don't make things up, but listen, I've seen
maybe the history of biology. All right, let's move on.
All right, let's get into our first segment here, Garret. Like I said, you created a list here. If you want to tell everybody what we are looking at, talking about, and speaking on.
Yeah, so we have the legit list. And what I did was I took players that have more or less broken out. We know that that's not as many players as normal because offense sucks right now, apparently. But players that have broken out in 2024, but are not necessarily considered by most to be top tier assets. And we ranked these 10 players on how legit we think the breakout is. Is this a player that we think is going to become a more regular, steady part of fantasy football, or is it a flash in the pan, something that we should ignore? So we each ranked these players. There's 10 players, so we ranked them 1 to 10. And we have some crossover, some overlap, and then we have a few that we see very differently. So I think that'll be fun to discuss. Rich, would you want me to go through all the players first, and then we'll kind of give our rankings, or do we just want to go player by player? What do you want to do?
That sounds good to do second, but first, what I think you should really do, if you ever do this again, and call it the too legit list.
Too legit to quit.
Yeah.
List.
Yes, please. And then
yes.
whoever the ultimate number one guy is will be MC Hammer.
Oh, can't touch this. All right. So the players that we are going to be talking through are Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is currently the quarterback 4 overall, averaging 19.9 points per game, leads the NFL in touchdown passes, and 4th in quarterback rating of quarterbacks with at least 30 attempts. Number 2, Zach Charbonnet, running back 8 on the season, averaging 18.6 points per game, has 4 touchdowns between the ground and the air, and was involved in the passing game even before Walker went out. Number 3, Jauan Jennings, currently wide receiver 4, averaging 22.2 points per game after his huge 46-point performance on Sunday. Outshadowed Brandon Ayuk, but we do have Kittle, Debo, and Ricky Pearsall returning. Number 4, Andy Dalton, first game in for Bryce Young, and he absolutely balled out. Quarterback 8 on the week, 24.6 points. He was 26 of 38 for 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. Could have been a lot more had they not taken the foot off the gas a little bit in the second half because they were crushing them. At 5, we've got Allen Lazard, currently wide receiver 15, averaging 14.6 points per game. He has 3 touchdowns on the season and is 3rd on the team in targets behind Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Number 6, Jordan Mason, quarterback or running back 14 on the season. He's getting basically all the touches in San Francisco, and the CMC timeline just keeps getting more and more murky. Number 7, Wan'Dale Robinson, quietly been very consistent behind Malik Neighbors. He has been wide receiver 3 each and every week, a wide receiver 3 each and every week, and has averaged over 8 targets per game. Number 8, Quentin Johnston, currently wide receiver 19 on the season, has 3 touchdowns on the year and is 2nd on the team in targets with 13. Braelon Allen, averaging over 10 points per game and at a season high 14 touches this past Thursday. And last but not least, Darnell Mooney. He has been wide receiver 15 over the past 2 weeks, eclipsing 14 PPR points both of those weeks, and is only 1 target away from the team lead, which is 19 by Drake London. So, guys, let's start with Sam Darnold. Where did you guys rank Sam Darnold 1 to 10?
The lower the number, the better. We just wanted to get that
the number
out of the way.
one guy is. I did not explain that. I should have. Yes, the number 1 guy is the one we believe is the most legit. The number 10 guy is the one that we believe is the least legit.
Rich, I think we got it. This is all the way across the board here, right? So this is the one guy that we agree completely on, right? We all have met number 2. Yeah. And obviously right now he's completing 68% of his passes, 8 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. And really he just generally looks good. And we haven't seen any of those really ugly moments out of Sam Darnold that I think he was we had grown accustomed to seeing in a Jets uniform. And a year over there in San Fran, I think did a lot for him, kind of learn the game from really just a master over there. And then coming basically to a parallel system here in Minnesota, I think it's just been a really smooth transition, and he's looked really good. So I have a fair amount of confidence that he's going to look like this the rest of the season. And that's why I think 2 was appropriate. There was one guy, obviously, I thought was more appropriate, but I like Sam Darnold quite a bit going forward.
Yeah, that was my number 2 here as well for, not just everything that Matt said. I love the point you made about, Sam Darnold sitting behind a year there in San Francisco and learn, like you said, the GOAT, Kyle Shanahan there and his system and what he expects and how he wants the quarterback just come out and execute the game plan, right? Like that's the big thing. Like you want your players to go out there and execute the game plan of the head coach and the coaching staff. And Sam Darnold's done that. He's looked really good. And we got to remember Sam Darnold's really young. Like he's still younger than Burrow out there. Came in the league at only 20 years old. And right now he's just lighting the league up. Right now he leads the league in touchdown passes with 8. He's thrown a multiple touchdown 2 touchdowns at least in every game so far in the season. And this is something that we kind of talked about in the preseason, right? Like, but not about Sam Darnold, about JJ McCarthy and how we were somewhat excited about him going to Minnesota and the system that he was in and why we kind of bumped him above of Drake May for a certain period of time. I know I pivoted right after right before the preseason, I went back to Drake May. But again, we're talking about splitting hairs. And it was mostly because of the system and the coaching staff and having Kevin O'Connell there and what he did with Nick Mullins for those last couple of games of the year, with Nick Mullins going over 1,000 yards passing. And for that one brief glimpse of a window, Josh Dobbs looking good. But he's such a good quarterback coach. Yeah, he's a good quarterback coach, runs a good system, and put in Sam Darnold, who's now shown in the right system can execute an NFL offense at a very high level. And I know, Garrett, you put a video on your Twitter saying, hey, is there a controversy here now possibly going forward with Minnesota?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think Sam Darnold's shown that he could possibly get a contract after this of decent money. And, they did invest that first round pick in JJ McCarthy. I know Kevin Connick said, hey, we saw enough to know that we have our franchise quarterback. So I believe that they're still going to put their eggs in J.J. McCarthy's basket. And I think Sam Darnold will probably get too much money elsewhere to go somewhere. What if they make the playoffs?
What if they win the division? They win the division and let's go to the conference finals. Like, would that be enough for you to say, if you're Kevin O'Connell, would that be enough for you to say, man, like, this guy's played too well, maybe we let McCarthy sit another year?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it really comes down to here.
It's pie in the sky, but
no, for sure. Like, if they're like, hey, we want to get Sam Darnold back here on a 1-year deal. Like, yeah, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't see Sam Darnold signing that contract, right? Like, he's probably got, like, if he has an opportunity, kind of like the Nick Foles situation, right? Like in Philadelphia. I mean, Nick Foles literally went out and won a Super Bowl, like fantastic in the second half, and won the Super Bowl as ever Super Bowl MVP. But at the time, they just paid Carson Wentz and thought they had their guy. Right. So, like, and it's not the same thing because they didn't pay JJ McCarthy, but I think more so it'd be like Sam Darnold wanting to just play on a 1-year deal and go get any team that is like looking for a quarterback situation and maybe get a multiple year deal there is what I think. And that's only the difference there. It's not even like the Minnesota not wanting him back. It's about signing him to a multiple year deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other thoughts, Matt, before we move to our next guy?
Just final, I guess, thought about Sam Darnold. It was never a physical thing with him. It was always whether or not he could figure out the game mentally, and it really does seem like it has slowed down. Yeah, he's not seeing ghosts anymore, which is great. So Sam Darnold, I think, has a lot of potential, kind of not only this year but moving forward as well.
Okay, absolutely. And now, we all agree there on the number 2, but the number 1, we have a little difference here, a little discrepancy, and Matt and I have the same player at 1 that Garret has at 3, and Garret has somebody else. Garret, who do you have as your number 1 significant, too legit to quit player on the list?
So the number 1 guy on the too legit to quit list for me is Braelon Allen. You guys have him at 3 and 4, respectively. Part of this is for me, just simply watching him play. Like, had you put him on a team that did not have Breece Hall, we would be potentially clamoring to say, like, is this guy an RB1? Like, he's looked the part. Like, and I remember even our evaluation, we're like, he's a tough eval. Like, we're not sure if we like him or not, because I don't know. Is he quick enough? Is he, I don't know. But there's enough raw athleticism there that, like, it wouldn't surprise us if he ended up being good, but it's just, he's hard to evaluate. Well, it seems like he's lived up to any expectation and probably exceeded any expectation. If teams knew he was going to play like this, he wasn't going to last till day 3. So he's exceeded all expectations at this point. Looks like one of, if not maybe the best back in the class when it's all said and done. He's looked phenomenal. The only question mark about Braelon Allen is how many touches does he realistically get with a stud like Breece Hall there? We know this week he had 11 touches on the ground, an additional 3 through the air. That's a lot of work. Now, it was a game that they had kind of in hand. It's not always going to work out that nicely, but that's a lot of work for a number 2 running back when you have somebody as good as Breece Hall. It could be one of those situations where they say, hey, this is great for real life NFL. We have 2 really good running backs and we love our life. It could end up being one of those situations where a team gets desperate and comes calling and maybe gets traded for a haul. We'll have to see how it all plays out. But either way, worst case scenario, Braelon Allen is a flex consideration right now. Best case scenario, if somebody goes down or whatever, we're now talking about a top 12, top 10 type of guy.
Yeah. I mean, you could trade him for a haul, but there's already a haul on his team. So I don't think it's going to work. And I think this is absolutely ridiculous. You got him number 1 on your list, if I'm being honest.
You have him at 3.
I know, and I feel like I have him too high as well. It's simple. Listen, he's running back 28 right now. His week 2 when he had the 19.7 points was great. But, like, I think, yeah, if you're looking from a talent standpoint and watching this guy run, this kid, when we were watching this tape, he was 19 years old. So like, what do we know anything about what he's going to turn into besides he was an absolute monster? But like, yeah, he looks absolutely fantastic. He's very efficient and decisive in his runs, really executing his position very well. But this is like, I'm not looking from that standpoint. I'm looking at this from a fantasy football standpoint. And you're right. Like, how you have him over Matt and I's number one of Jordan Mason, like it doesn't make any sense.
That makes no sense. It's the same argument. I don't know how you can't say it doesn't make sense. It's the exact same issue.
There's guy
an elite running back ahead of the other guy.
Ahead of where? Ahead of the bratwurst. He's in Germany right now getting his Achilles looked at, and you don't leave the country and go have somebody look at your Achilles if it's not like super serious, right? Like there's something drastically wrong. I mean, to the point where like we have to question if we're going to see Christian McCaffrey in the regular fantasy football season this year. Because right now, my crystal balls are telling me 9 we're going to see them. So for me, I don't know how, like Jordan Mason right now is coming out here, balling out, looking extremely like a number one running back, not a currently fantasy football running back one. It's probably going to be the running back going forward the whole way of the rest of the season. Like his fantasy, like too legit to quit is way better than Braelon Allen's because, yeah, Braelon Allen looks good. And you're right. It really sucks he's behind Breece Hall, but he's behind Breece Hall. And that's just the way the cookie's going to crumble.
So you would rather, dynasty-wise, not just this season, of course the season plays a role in it, but you would rather have Jordan Mason, you would draft Jordan Mason ahead of Braelon Allen today if we were to draft.
Yeah, 100%. Because Christian McCaffrey is 28 years old. And when he comes back, say he comes back later in the year, by the time you get to play him again, he'll be 29 years old, going on 30. He's got an Achilles injury. That's not even a regular Achilles injury. It's Achilles tendonitis.
He just aged him 2 years just now.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Now. Dude, if I'm going to put pedal to the metal, I'm going. No, I said I'm
it's a slippery slope on your way down to 30, man.
Yeah, you know what? Guess what's after 30? 31. Then all of a sudden he's 32. What? Listen, he's going to be retired.
I've said in the show for many a decade now that arithmetic could be whatever when we're talking about numbers here. So, but no, I mean for Jordan Mason, it doesn't matter. Like running back's the most fluid position on our roster. We say about all the time. Like so, whatever, like however you could squeeze that fruit, like get all the juice out right away and don't put it back down and try and eat it later because it could just end up being sour. We talk about how strong this running back class is next year. So for me, like give me the guy who's going to give me a full season and possibly finish as a running back one. We already know how hard it is to finish as a running back one just once in your career. So if I can get that right away, right now, yes, because otherwise you're just waiting on Breece Hall to get hurt. And then you got running back 28. And to the point where like, yeah, you can put Braelon as a flex play, but you're barely going to hope to scrape by. He's only going to eclipse 10 points twice out of these 3 games here. That big,
66% he's running of the time.
Yeah, pretty much. But so he's running back 28 with that 120-point game. So that kind of tells you something too. Like you're not really going to put him in your lineup because you're just hoping like that's another big time game. Where Jordan Mason, you're for sure getting your lineup. So Jordan Mason's my number one. And he's Matt's number one as well, which clearly means we're 66%. Right.
Hey, the last time I remember, you guys both had someone at number one, and I had someone different at number one. It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor. That's all I remember.
Way to cherry pick your memories. Good thing I have a bad memory.
From the best.
So
Matt, isn't Garret?
So I haven't even spoken on Braelon Allen. I haven't even spoken on Braelon Allen yet.
Or Jordan Mason.
Braelon Allen. Right. You moved on to Jordan Mason without me even getting a point in on Braelon Allen. So, I mean, Braelon Allen right now, running back 28, like you said, he's averaging 5.1 yards carry. To both of your guys' points, he passes the visual test for me more so than anything else. He looks much better. He looked like the good parts that you saw in Wisconsin that made you wonder if he could be good. He's doing that very consistently now in the NFL, which is great. He was young. I mean, there was plenty of time and kind of room for him to grow and become a better pro than he ever was in college. So I struggled with him a little bit. I did have him at 3 at one point. I moved him down to 4 just because, listen, I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain running back 28. And I kind of took that as like, this is how we're kind of trying to figure out these lists. Are they going to stay roughly where they're at? Are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? I think he can probably maintain it, and it's because he's getting work in the passing game as well, which is completely unexpected. The one thing about Wisconsin backs is you almost never know is if they can be a part of the passing game. Right. And 8 targets, 6 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown through 3 games in a part-time role is a pretty good indicator that they can use him in that respect. And that, I think, can at least keep him afloat and keep him usable through some of these bye weeks and everything like that. That's why I ended up at 4, but it's going to be shoddy. It's going to be hit or miss. So there's going to be times when maybe he dips down a little bit because he's going to have a rough week like he just had, or there's going to be boom weeks where he looks amazing, catches 3 or 4 passes, and maybe scores a touchdown where he's solidly in the double digits. So Braelon Allen, he's going to be a hard one to nail down for sure. But for me, same reasons that Rich said about Jordan Mason. He's running back 14. He's not running back 3 or 4 or anything like that. He's running back 14. So he's a high-end running back too. I think that's a slam dunk that's legit going forward. And he could go up if they use him more in the passing game. He only has 4 targets, 4 receptions for 20 yards. It's the rushing totals that's really getting him to that running back 14. He's got 324 yards rushing, which is second only to Saquon Barkley with 351. So it's Jordan Mason, I think, is legit. The stuff about Christian McCaffrey going to Germany is very concerning for me, and that's what really allowed me to get Jordan Mason all the way to my top spot, because that doesn't sound like a move that somebody would make if they're just waiting for something to kind of calm down. This sounds like something that they've been waiting and it hasn't been calming down, and now they're concerned that something is happening, that he's now flying to another country and is trying to get some sort of treatment for his tendonitis of his Achilles.
Yeah, that one is a really weird one. How we didn't know like earlier on that this was an issue, like leading up to Monday Night Football, like, oh, he still might play. He's questioned. Like, how is that ever a thing? If this is this bad, like that's pretty shoddy and very frustrating. Both guys, obviously, talented running backs. I did want to look. I wasn't sure. How old is Jordan Mason? 25. I knew he was a little bit older. So I think that's the last thing for me that kind of went into this equation is 5 years difference between the two players for me. So there's some hope of a long-term asset in Braelon Allen. I don't think there's much hope of a long-term asset in Jordan Mason, but you guys are absolutely right. I'd much rather have Mason this year than I would Allen. So we've basically covered our 1, 2, and 3, with the exception of Matt. Matt, we have not touched your third guy because you had it first in Jordan Mason, then you had Sam Darnold, then you had this guy before Braelon Allen. So who was it?
Yeah, Wan'Dale Robinson. And again, this is another one of these guys that I took this as, can they maintain where they're at now, right? And he's at wide receiver 36. He's been a consistent wide receiver 3 every single week. And I think that's kind of where Wan'Dale Robinson is going to live in this offense. Obviously, Malik Neighbors is going bonkers. He's going to be getting all sorts of looks. But Wan'Dale Robinson is the low A-dot kind of move the chains Robin to Malik Neighbors Batman. And I think he's going to be able to kind of live in that for the foreseeable future. It's not like they didn't spend good capital on Wan'Dale Robinson. I believe it was a 2nd round draft pick that they used on him a few years back. So they're going to want to get him involved. And I feel like they're finally starting to get some pieces for Danny Dimes in that offense. And, for the Giants, I don't know if this is going to click and all move in the right directions, but I know it's going to start with Malik Neighbors, and then there's going to have to be guys like Wan'Dale Robinson that kind of pick up the slack. Devery Henderson, geez, blast from the past there, and wrong name. Devin Singletary. These guys that aren't like A+ guys, but they're solid players. They're solid B players. And for fantasy, those guys equate to low-end running back 2s and wide receiver 3s, and that's what I think Wan'Dale Robinson is, and I think he's going to be able to maintain that.
Yeah, I think even to maintain where we're at is which is wide receiver 36, which is about as low as you get for a wide receiver 3. I think there's some guys that are going to come up here in the next couple of weeks and really start to kind of overlap overtake a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, guys behind him like Deontay Johnson now with Andy Dolphin out there. I think George Pickens going to catch him. I think Ladd McConkey still has a really good chance to catch him. I think Terry McLaurin's going to catch him. I think Jalen Waddle has a chance to catch him. So for me, like Wan'Dale, to me, it's just kind of like I have him in the middle of the road. I think I'm like 6 here overall on the too legit quit list here. So, but for me, it's kind of like this offense, the first like seeing all the heavy targets is Malik Neighbors, like you said, which can help Wan'Dale Robinson. I just find it really hard to believe like this could stay like at any like awesome level. I guess it could get better, but even if it does, like wide receiver 36 for me doesn't make it too legit to quit because I could easily quit wide receiver 36, definitely with all the names I mentioned behind him.
And I guess this is the first time playing too legit to quit, or not playing, but making our too legit to quit list. So maybe I looked at it slightly different than you looked at it because maybe this is the first time doing it. And I just I took it as, can they maintain that spot? And I think they can. I think he can, because I think eventually, listen, Neighbors has been going bonkers. They're going to start rolling coverages. Someone else is going to have to step up. It's going to be some of these guys that I was talking about. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's a low ADOT guy. I think the volume is probably going to go up a little bit in the coming weeks, just because he's going to be open. He's going to be running underneath as guys are chasing Malik Neighbors down the field.
It just doesn't matter when Malik Neighbors out there just mossing people on the sideline right in front of my seats, making me cry like a small child in front of my kids, wondering what's going on. And I tell him I apologize for raising him as a Browns fan, and he has to suffer along this. I've been suffering for 45 years of my life, but it's okay.
It's okay.
I'm fine. I'm only going to Vegas this year to drown my sorrows in another loss because I can't get enough of you. I get text messages from my friends saying the only thing I feel worse about is Rich has to pay all this money to go watch this nonsense in person week in, week out. If I'm okay, like I said, I'm just not really too sad about it or talk about it in front of tens of thousands of people, but it's just me. Garrett, what do you have to say?
Just the last thing I'll touch on is I think the reason I'm semi interested-ish in Wan'Dale Robinson is just the consistency of the volume. Over 8 targets per game, like that's pretty good volume overall. And if he does get a slight uptick, if Malik comes down from the stratosphere that he's on right now, like if there's any chance of that even going up, this is all just on receiving yardage. Like if he sneaks a touchdown or 2 in there, he could be pretty interesting. So I think in the bye weeks, he's like the perfect classic bye week fill-in guy where it's like, dang it, it's Justin Jefferson's out this week. I need somebody that's going to get me 10 points. Okay, Wan'Dale Robinson.
Before we go on real quick about Jordan Mason, can I tell you real quick? I saw his projected stats on just what he's doing right now.
Okay.
Which it currently has 324 yards, averaging 4.8 yards a carry. And he has 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions, 20 yards, no touchdowns. That equals out to 1,836 yards, 11 touchdowns, 23 receptions, 113 yards, and of course, no touchdowns in a receiving game, which doesn't make sense either. Just to give you a heads up, that's a little ridiculous. Next.
There we go. Yeah, that would be a bonker amount of yards. So let's go to your number 4 guy. So you have this guy at 4, Rich. I have him at 6. Matt has him at 8. So decently well spread out on this one. Number 4 is Zach Charbonnet for you there, Rich.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to I'm just a little bit concerned with Kenneth Walker and this oblique injury. Like he's constantly having these core issues there. Yeah. And always banged up. And I know when he plays, they're giving him a lot of carries, but Zach Charbonnet right now, like you said, running back 8 and looks really good to it. Coming out, getting almost all the running back shares, seeing 80% of the shares back there on the backfield, getting all the red zone touches. And he's going to be kind of like flirting those running back 1 numbers as long as Kenneth Walker's out. I mean, right now in week 3, the guy had 137 of his yards after contact. Like, so being involved in pass game, running
Rich,
strong.
That's because he's so freaking slow. They get to him so early. Have you seen this guy run? He looks slow. Like he's running in sand, dude.
Doesn't matter. He says, "Get off me."
There is no shot of this being maintained. He's got 3.5 yards per carry right now, which is 58th best in the NFL, and zero explosive runs of 15 yards or more. As soon as your boy gets back, Kenneth Walker, he's going to be taking that job over, Rich. There's no way in heck that he's going to maintain running back 8 going forward. I'm surprised I didn't put him at 10. Zach Charbonnet is slow.
Yeah, see, look, but you looked at it as like, oh yeah, because you look at this list, like what's this too legit chance it could stay at running back 8? Yeah, I put that at big quit too, but I still think if again, I'm worried. My concern is Kenneth Walker. It's not Zach Charbonnet is like super sweet. So it's like for the rest of I'm looking at it as like the rest of the year kind of season. Zach Charbonnet, they're giving him all the touches, all the goal line carries. This is a team that gets down into the red zone quite often with their receiving core. So for me, like he will consistently have an opportunity to score. Coach McDonald out there is absolutely using their offense is using them. I don't want to say he's put in a perfect situation because he's looked good. It's just a usage itself, right? That almost seeing 90% of all the snaps out there. And it comes down to that situation for me is like, if this guy's going to get all the snaps, he's going to produce. And it came down to more. I was thinking about this list like, okay, yeah. Now with Kenneth Walker coming back soon, I was like, oh, is Kenneth Walker coming back soon? If Kenneth Walker does come back, like how long is he going to stay back in? Like that was this 3 years in a row. He's had like, these oblique hernia injuries here. And it's concerning for me.
That part is a concern, but I don't think there's really a question in my eyes who the better running back is, and I think Kenneth Walker.
Oh yeah,
as soon as he gets back, he's getting that back.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he's going to overtake Kenneth Walker by any means. I didn't have him for those reasons, or I think like he's a new starter there. It's just more kind of like the Jordan Mason situation. Like, oh, he's gonna get a lot of touches here for a while.
And to back up my point, he right now is averaging less than a yard per carry before contact. It's 0.8 yards per attempt.
So you're right. Contact. Hence all his yards after initial contact are because
he gets 2 feet and then there's contact because he's so slow.
Hands all over him like he's at a Diddy party. Unbelievable. Who's next on the list?
All right. I will say I have him kind of in between you guys. The receiving work, I think he keeps that. So I think he's going to continually be involved in this offense, but I don't think he's ever going to be the feature back unless Kenneth Walker is out. Next up on the list, we'll go to my number 4 guy. I have him a little bit higher than the two of you, and that's Darnell Mooney for the Atlanta Falcons. I have him at 4. Matt, you have him at 7. Rich, you have him at 8. I've been very interested in what Darnell Mooney has done over the past 2 weeks. Obviously, that whole offense was a hot mess week 1. They didn't do jack squat against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But in the past 2 weeks, Kirk Cousins is starting to look like himself again. They're moving the ball down the field. And there's been a surprising, maybe even concerning amount of times where Darnell Mooney has been the first read in this offense. They have been looking to get the ball to Darnell Mooney, despite having Drake London, despite having Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. Darnell Mooney is a feature point of this offense, and Kirk Cousins really seems to like him. He's been going to him even in big clutch moments, and Mooney's been coming up with plays over the past 2 weeks, over 14 points. Both of those weeks, one was 14.5, one was like 17, I believe, and only 1 target away from the team lead. Really did kind of surprise me when you think about all of the receiving options there. So I think Darnell Mooney's another one where I don't think he's fully going away. I think Darnell Mooney is going to be a guy you don't want to start, but you kind of find yourself starting him just because he's getting so many looks in this offense.
I'll start with this. He's right now, he has the highest ADOT on the team. He has the most air yards, which I know we're going to kind of talk about next show. And like you mentioned, the second most targets on the team. That being said, and those are all good things to like hang your hat on, I just think there's better guys on that team that are going to emerge. I don't love Drake London, but I think he's better than Darnell Mooney. Kyle Pitts has got to be getting more work. Yeah, exactly. He's better. I mean, I just think wide receiver 35, Rich mentioned this with Wan'Dale Robinson. And while I think Wan'Dale Robinson might have a little bit more juice than Darnell Mooney, it doesn't really apply to Wan'Dale Robinson for me, but I think there are guys that are going to be able to jump Mooney personally. I know that he kind of is there's people out there that like Darnell Mooney and liked him since his days in Chicago. Don't count me as one of them, I guess. I just don't think he's going to be a guy that can stay up here.
Yeah, I've never. He's an okay player. Guy. Yeah, even when he was like had that like brief window in Chicago, and everybody's like, "Oh, Darnell Mooney going the ranks." I'm like, man, I just don't see it. I'm not moving him anywhere. If anything, I'm gonna call him the NFL lubricant and just watch him slowly slide down. Because yeah, I'm with you, Matt. You know, even if you take his last 2 weeks, which have been his obviously 17.8 points and 14.6, he's wide receiver 16 overall. Drake London would still be wide receiver 11 overall in the same 2 weeks. So which kind of, you know, tells you that Kirk Cousins is getting a little bit more comfortable in this offense. Drake London's still getting a majority of the target share. They still got to figure out how to use Kyle Pitts, if Kyle Pitts even still exists at this point. I don't even know if he's even a real person anymore. I don't know what's going on out there.
Hey, he had that big like 30-yard play. That was nice.
Yeah. No, it's like a 50-yard play.
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is going to be the Kyle Pitts rebound game, baby. Finally, he's back. Kirk, looks like we were talking about Darnell Mooney. Like, Kirk is getting back, baby. And then, no, like, he went right back into his shell. And it's like, I'm a hermit now. Call me Krabby Pants. I ain't coming out of this. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. So for me, I have him lower. I've seen Darnell Mooney. I've seen him play this game before. He's the kind of person, and when you wipe off the makeup, the clown makeup, it's still just as goofy. And I'm not kidding.
Former 1,000-yard receiver. Former 1,000-yard receiver. I'm just saying.
I'm looking at a stat right now that I don't even want to say because it contradicts what my own point. But right now, and this is to your point, Garrett. There's a stat that basically tracks if they're the first read within the offense. And right now, Drake London's 18, Darnell Mooney is 13, and Kyle Pitts is 4. Oof. There's been 4 plays when he's been the first read on an offensive play.
Yeah,
Ray McLeod has 9. So just to let you know,
that's where he kind of stands. Kirk Cousins look him dead in the eye right away. First, and going, not this time. On to the next. Wow, what a cruel world. Who else is on this list we're talking about?
All right, let's go to the next, your number 5 guy, where we've only got a few guys left. This is kind of where I was at with Mooney. This is where you're at with Jauan Jennings, Rich. You have him at 5. I have him at 8. Matt said dead last. I'm putting him at 10. So, Rich, why do you think this is somewhat legit for Jauan?
Man, because this is the 49ers offense right now is like me when I was 8 years old at the carnival shooting at those ducks going by. They're just dropping super quick. And for me, like, it just – number one, in an offense, yeah, Matt's showing you how it's done, baby. They call me Quick Draw Rich sometimes. Hey, that's no times. But anyways, that's
Quick Draw McRich.
Tell your friends. And for me, they have a receiver who's got a calf injury. He's probably not rumored to come back till like after week 6. And those are hard, recurring injuries. Brandon Ayuk still trying to warm up since he missed every single preseason and training camp thing going on out there. Christian McCaffrey's in Germany, like I said, eating bratwurst and have his Achilles tendonitis looking at. I don't know what's going on out there. Trent Brown went down with injury. So for me, it just comes down to even in Jordan Kittle pops up out of nowhere. Looks like abracadabra. It's like you said, Candyman 3 times in the mirror. It's like, boom. Like all of a sudden here he is on the injury list, no longer here with us because there's
Ricky
nobody
Pearsall
left.
Even got shot. He got shot.
This is like a bad horror movie, man. This is ridiculous. People are going down all kind of weird injuries, weird names, going to different countries. People are getting shot at.
Which just means Jauan Jennings is next. What are you talking about? He's on this same cursed team, dude.
There's going to be able to. There's always a hero of the movie. What are you talking about? Somebody's got to live. Like, there's always the one guy that's got to live. Like, it's not. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, Matt. Come on.
Good horror film. They all die.
Yeah, you're right. In a good forward movie like Cabin in the Woods, they all die. It's such a good movie. They
all die.
So for me, I'm just going to Jauan Jennings, who they extended him for a reason because they just thought he was a very solid NFL player. This guy who scored 2 touchdowns in NFL Super Bowl, he looked good there as well. So as long as there's injuries, and Brock Purdy clearly has a really good rapport with Jauan Jennings right now, and there's nobody else to throw the football in Kyle Shanahan's offense. We always want we've said this before. We always want the number 1 receiver in Shanahan's offense. Always have. So right now, if Purdy's looking that way, he could trust Jauan Jennings. Yes, I continue him to still be, at worst case, what you guys are looking at, like a wide receiver 3. So I think that's worst case. I don't think he's going to put up another 50 burger close to it. So I just put him here at 5 in the middle because I'm like, who else would I want on this list right now for the 2024 season? It's definitely Jauan Jennings.
All right, Matt, you had him last. What do you think?
Yeah, I just think this is completely inflated due to the fact that all of the stars are out in this team. And as these guys start to trickle back, Jauan Jennings will fade back into the background.
When's the trickle begin? Can you start doing a rain dance? Because it's going the wrong way, bro.
Listen, Brandon Ayuk, we talked about it, I think, on the injury show briefly. He's had some pretty uncharacteristic drops here. I think that's going to start correcting itself as he kind of gets himself acclimated back into the NFL game. Because since you mentioned, he did not do anything in the offseason like a jerk, and basically isn't ready for this season to start. I think in the coming weeks we're going to see that kind of round back into shape, and Jauan Jennings will go back to the number 2, and then as soon as Debo comes back from the calf in a few weeks, he's going to go back to the number 3, and then Kittle will go, and then he'll be the 4th. I mean, it's just gonna keep trickling down for Jauan Jennings, and he might pop back up here and there, but I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that he's going to maintain wide receiver 4 numbers going forward. It's not going to happen.
Well, yeah. Again, you looked at the number list as like wide receiver 4, and I just wouldn't order if I had to take these guys, which I clearly have Andy Dalton way too low. Probably I have him at 10. I has him at 5, and he looked really good. It's just, again, I'm so hard. You know, it's not even the red hair. It's just more of like, you know, every time you get these quarterbacks that you're unprepared for, and the backup quarterbacks, whether it be Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, they come out here right away and guns a-blazing. And boy, did he really kick Bryce Young in the balls pretty hard. You know, the Carolina Panthers over the last 2 years have only had 2 games where they threw over 300 yards in Bryce Young's career, and they're both by Andy Dalton. So
I feel like,
yeah, Matt.
I feel like you're reading right off my. Yeah, I feel like you're reading right off my notes, but except for you just put your own rich twist on him by kicking him in the balls.
Yeah, well deserved.
Last 2 we have not covered yet. Quentin Johnston, we had 7, 6, and 7, and then we had Allen Lazard pretty much dead last, 9, 9, and 10. So we obviously don't believe the Allen Lazard breakout at all. Any hope that Quentin Johnston, this is a thing? To me, I'll just go real quick. He's scoring touchdowns, which are not super sticky. Like, good for him, that's awesome, but they're not super sticky, and they're on like not a lot of targets. Ladd McConkey is still clearly the number 1 on an offense that's not throwing the ball hardly at all. So I think if you could sell as quick as you can.
Yeah, the biggest fluke on this list who should be at 10 should be Quentin Johnston. Sorry, Matt, but he's a fluke. He should be on this list. His touchdowns are complete blown coverage. And there are times if you go back and watch the tape on the Chargers, like it's like you just see Quentin Johnston how he's just body running. Catching. No, he's just running. Just go, hey, maybe the ball come to me, maybe wow, he's just running. These are such fluky numbers right now. Like Ladd McConkey is getting all the targets. Like he's getting a 30% target share. Quentin Johnston's numbers are all fluky.
He's second on the team in air yards and targets. There's just no one else there. So I mean, that's why he's getting that's why he's getting the work. That's why he's getting the 3 touchdowns are obviously what's inflating this number. And to your point, Garrett, 66 pass attempts through 3 games. It's the second lowest attempts in the whole NFL. So it is a very low passing volume team. So this could very well just evaporate, just due to the fact that maybe he doesn't score touchdowns in the next 3 weeks, and he just starts sliding down the board. So I mean, I get it. But it's nice to have him be a part of the offense this year.
Sure.
I don't particularly like him, but I think he's part of the offense. That's why I put him kind of in the middle, but below middle for me. 6. You guys had him at 7, so I mean it's not we're not crazy.
Basically.
Yeah.
I hope he turns it around. I really do. And like you're right. It's nice to see him come out and actually do something with his opportunities. It's just like every time he does something, it's just like it's not him really like doing something great. It's just more like capitalize on it. Like it's like the quarterback Justin Herbert's capitalized on a defense mistake. It's kind of like the other night. Every time Jamar Chase got man coverage, guess who I'm throwing the football to?
Right. It's like the defense completely over commits to the run, and he's just standing there waving his arms. Hey, I'm back over here. He's just throwing the ball. All right, cool. But
real quick, super random. Matt, take a look at Rich's screen right now. Right below the hashtag on the hashtag Nerd Herd, there's that white line. Why does that look like a kitten? Just like perched right there on the wood board.
He does kind of look like a kitten. Yeah, now that you say that. 2 legs and kind of a head tilted a little bit.
There's a little shadow there where the legs are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right, if you're watching the YouTube right now, is that a kitten? Yes or no? If you're not watching on YouTube, you should. Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789.
All right, let's wrap up the show with our final 2 segments here. First one is going to be the trade of the week. This trade comes from Garret. Who's that? El Chupacabra?
Yeah,
El Chupacabra.
Yeah,
that's the goat sucker.
We've got CD Lamb for Nico Collins and a 2025 first. Now we don't have an explanation of where they expect that first to be, so we're just going to say mid. We're just going to say a 25 mid first. So what side of that would you guys be on? Because I picked this one because I had a really hard time deciding what side of this I would be on.
So this is a 12-team start 12, 2 QB full PPR. And for me being a start 12 league, I'm taking Nico Collins in a 25 first.
It's a lot of starters.
Yeah, it's a lot of starters at 25 first. Like you said, I'm just going to assume it's a mid right now. Just because that's all we can do. And Nico Collins is, he's right up there. He's an excellent wide receiver 1. Dallas is having some trouble out there this year. CeeDee Lamb, who is still I know it's only 3 games in, but CeeDee Lamb is currently, wide receiver 18 overall, and Nico Collins is wide receiver 6. So for me, getting an elite receiver, do we all want CeeDee Lamb straight up? Yeah, but if I can get a 25 first and it's a vacuum and what we expect to be another strong draft class coming up in a start 12 league, to me, this is a no-brainer, easy decision. This is how I add depth and accumulate more fantasy football points with that 12th, that random 25 first. So easy pick for me, Nico Collins over CeeDee Lamb with the first.
Obviously, if this was not a league where you start 12 people, this would, for me, would be easily CeeDee. Right? I mean, because he's just the better player, and I think that cream will rise to the top as the season goes on. I don't think, CeeDee Lamb's not going to average 13.8 points for the rest of the season. He's had some fluky, weird, games here in the first few weeks where he hasn't been seeing the sort of volume that we saw him get last season. So I would expect that to change pretty quickly. It's not like anything else really changed on this team from last year. It's not like they brought in somebody else to catch passes. It's eventually going to be CeeDee Lamb catching a buttload of passes here for the Cowboys. So if you're looking for just who the best player is and in a vacuum, that CeeDee Lamb side is better for me. But in a 12, when you have to start 12 players, I understand needing the depth, and that's the only thing that would tilt this towards Nico Collins, in my opinion. So if this was just a regular where you're starting, 9, maybe 10. Yeah, 9 or 10. It's CeeDee Lamb for me, but the 12 starting positions makes it a lot more difficult to get a lineup in and week out. So that's why I would go Nico Collins as well.
I'd still be pretty tempted in a 10-man start 10. I'd be pretty tempted with that 25 first too. If it's a mid, if it's a late first, no. If it's a mid,
there's so many wide receivers, Rich. There really are. You want the high end guys. Last year, CeeDee Lamb averaged 6.
He is a high end guy. Well, that's the whole point. He's a high end guy. He is a high end guy.
He averaged 6 more points than Nico Collins last year, who was the wide receiver 12. CD was the wide receiver 1. A 6-point difference per game is a lot, man.
Matt, that's like me going fast at a campground. That's past tense, baby. Come on.
And this year, and you're right, this year CD Lamb is averaging.
I hate that.
6
I love
points
that.
less. Yeah, no kidding.
I'm using it. I'm stealing that for sure.
So corny. I can't believe you never heard that one before, Garrett.
I've not. And my dad's great at those. And so the fact that he hasn't used it is a big surprise. All right, let's get to our last section here. Numbers that matter. So we did have a slight update to this thanks to Matt here. So it was originally just 4 guys out of the 15. It is technically now 5 because Rashid Shaheed dropped out of the top 24. But numbers that matter, we're looking at leaders in air yards for 2024. And overall, we've known in the past, there's usually a very good correlation to air yards, to what players are actually, how they perform as far as the points they score week in and week out. There's a very strong correlation between the two. And if you're not familiar with air yards, it's basically just the amount of air, the amount of actual yardage that was thrown to a player. It doesn't matter if they catch it or not, but on their targets, how much yardage has there been available potentially to them on these targets. So it does not count yards after the catch. So guys like Debo don't typically rank as high in these, but it's still very strong correlator. So we have 15 players, and we have now 11 of the 15. Sorry, I take that back. 10 of the 15 are all top 24 guys. So we can see that the correlation is pretty strong. However, the number 2 player, number 3 player, 6, 8, and then I mentioned Rashid Shaheed at 14. All of these guys are outside of our top 24 in total points this season. So I think this is a good question to be asking ourselves. Should we be looking at these other players for this season saying better days are ahead because we know they're getting targets and these are valuable deep targets? Calvin Ridley has the 2nd most air yards. Amari Cooper has the 3rd most air yards. Rome Odunze, 6th. Cortland Sutton, 8th. And Rashid Shaheed at 14th. He's just barely outside the top 24 at 26. So wanted your guys' thoughts, because I think these numbers are significant, are important, but each one does have a little bit different context to it. So how many of these guys do you think are going to sneak inside the top 24? And of course, if we think they're going to sneak in, we should probably be targeting them.
So let me start on Rashid Shaheed. Obviously prior to Monday night was in there, and he also had a dud of a week. He had 0 points this week. So that's kind of like a double hit in the fact that he was getting air yards. He just didn't connect this week. It just didn't happen on the big pass, and that's kind of where he lives. So he's a little bit volatile, Rashid Shaheed. But the other guys, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Rome Odunze, and Cortland Sutton, for me, there's a common thread as to why these guys are getting air yards and maybe they're not connecting. And I look directly to their quarterbacks, and they're either a veteran that's struggling in Deshaun Watson, or it's a young guy, either a first or a second-year guy. Calvin Ridley obviously has Will Levis, and Rome Odunze and Cortland Sutton are both working off rookie guys in Caleb Williams and Bo Nix. So for me, I don't know that I can rely on any one of those guys besides Shaheed, who I think is going to have better days ahead of him, kind of getting a bump here, because there's going to be weeks that it looks good and everything's clicking for those rookies. And then there's going to be weeks where it's just the defenses are doing something new and that he hasn't seen, and they struggle. So I don't know that any one of those other guys is, and Amari Cooper, I just don't have faith that Deshaun Watson is going to pull even a half together that looks like football. So
yeah, he's capital P, capital O, capital O, capital P. But I mean, for me, I'd put Amari Cooper on this list. I really believe that going to this game, I was talking to my son about it on the way to the game. Like, I really believe Cooper's gonna have a big game this week. They were talking about it all week about him getting more involved. I kind of put in the same thing we talked about Ayuk, Matt, like a player that just sat out all training camp, didn't have any really good rapport time with his crappy quarterback to gain some trust. And even though he still led his team in targets, so it's not just air yards, like he's leading his team consistently in targets. So I would put Shaheed and Amari Cooper in there where I feel more comfortable, just on how much, targets he's going to see. And he's still so talented that it's probably most likely to come into at least probably mid-range wide receiver 2, if I had to guess, for like worst case scenario for him. And if it gets any more worse, they're going to have to put Jameis Winston.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also encouraging signs. And if you're in season long, you might not necessarily see this guy as a target. If you're in dynasty, you're not getting him. But Rome Odunze, very encouraging sign this week, had a big week. Caleb Williams looked better, still not there, but he looked better this week. 2 touchdowns. I think he had over 300 yards this past week. So good signs and a big connection in the end zone there for Rome Odunze. So it does look like better days are ahead.
I saw his tweet by Full Time Fantasy earlier in the day and said over the last 2 weeks, only 3 receivers have over 300 air yards. And it was Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Rome Odunze.
Such a good freaking class.
A very good class. The one guy on here that I am interested that comes in and week out and just produces is Alec Pierce. Now that Josh Downs is back, and Josh Downs, we're going to talk about Michael Pittman Jr. next year. So, or next show. Don't need to go too detailed about that and how the snap share will be affected with Michael Pittman. So I'm really kind of see how Josh Downs affects Alec Pierce, because it seems like that's like Anthony Richardson's go-to. And Anthony Richardson right now is finding his most success chucking the ball downfield to Alec Pierce. Like that's where he's almost only winning. So I'm interested to see how he pans out, because like he's just like almost like Andre Jovis, right? Like just week in, week out, scored points. Alec Pierce in the same boat here, just week in, week out, coming out here scoring points, has a good connection out there with him. So I'm interested to see how he comes in. Khalil Shakir falls in that category. You guys mentioned Alan Lazard earlier in the show. Like these guys are so far just coming in and giving you, almost double-digit points so far, like 2 out of 3 weeks, which is exactly what we're looking for. So we'll be back in our next episode talking about Michael Pittman Jr. and Anthony Richardson.
Adios.